Hi folks, my name is Pete Friedman. I'm the founder and publisher of CentralTrack.com. I am about to be joined today by Dallas Police Department Officer Sergeant Ira Carter. Sergeant Carter first kind of popped up on our radar at the beginning of the month when the day after the kind of police ambush on the Margaret Hunt Hill Bridge, a video went semi-viral of him interacting with protesters. He was kind of the first cop that we're aware of in Dallas to take a knee alongside them. And he also kind of encouraged them and told them to keep going, to quote, see this through. Let's check that video out right now.
Here's what I'm gonna do for you guys, okay? I'm gonna challenge each and every last one of you, okay? See this through. If it's something important to you, see it through. All I ask you guys is do it peacefully, okay? Don't destroy anything, don't destroy anybody's property, because at the end of the day, people have to live, they have to eat, things of that nature. But you have to understand, there is more than just police to one part of the justice system. It is a whole justice system. So in order to change it, you gotta change everything. And in willing to change everything, you gotta be willing to see it through. It's just like I tell my kids, anything worth having is worth working for. And so you can't protest today and then next week you're not heard from, okay? So if you want to see change, then you got to see the whole change all the way through, okay? And so I ask each of you, while you out here protesting, while you're trying to get change, things of that nature, please stay safe, do it the right way, and understand that there are police officers on this side that do agree with you and respect what you're doing.
Okay, so as you can see, not quite the same response we've seen from other DPD officers, so we're excited to talk to Sergeant Carter now, and here he is. There we go.
Yeah.
Well, Sergeant, thank you for taking the time to speak with us today. I see you're in uniform and in your car. Where are you at the moment?
Well, I'm actually here at the station, just about to leave. So
It looks like is that the Omni I see in the background?
Yeah, it's coming from headquarters, so I just pulled over. Yeah.
What has, these have been wild times in Dallas at large. What has the last couple of weeks been like for you as an officer here in the city?
Well, it's been rough. You got to understand some things happen across the country that kind of put us all in a light to where you never want to be seen. And that's in anything you do. You never want to see a bad light on anything you do, whether it's personal, professional, anything like that. And so as a police officer, it's been trying, I'm saying, and it's been tough. But as someone who's been doing the profession for 24 years, I understand there's a need for change. And so the only way to change that is you have to listen to the people that are actually telling you what they need for change. And so sometimes you, as they always say, the truth hurts, but you have to listen. It's the only way for us to go forward. I've never seen a protest like this, in my over 20 years of law enforcement. In the past 10 years, I've never seen anyone protest across the country like it has been, in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, today is the 20th straight day of police brutality protests in Dallas, Texas. Things were pretty heated early on, the first couple of days in particular, starting with that first Friday night, then into that kind of day-long situation on Saturday, then the curfew situation on Sunday, the bridge situation on Monday. And then I first became aware of you in relation to this story on the Tuesday that followed the bridge situation. You actually got kind of in amongst the crowds at a protest on that Tuesday, June 2nd. And I was wondering if you could just kind of walk me through that moment, tell me what inspired you to kind of start a dialogue with the people and why you were inspired to say what you said.
Well, a lot of the people that were protesting looked like me. I'm saying, I've been a police officer for 24 years. I'm a black male. And there's been times that I've been pulled over and racially profiled by other police officers. And so I understand where they're coming from. But as you stated on that Friday night and that Saturday night, there was just a lot of chaos tearing up the city. I don't agree with that, you know. And for each his own, even though I disagree with what you state or how you do it, we have to come to that common agreement to understand how can we go forward to fix this problem. So as I was riding, I actually wasn't even attempting to go toward the protesters. I just happened to turn down the wrong street and thought they were a couple of streets over, and I ran into them. And as I ran into them, one of the guys spoke out and he said, "Hey, you need to get a real job." And so I spoke back and said, "Sir, I have a real job, but I understand your frustration. I understand where you are, and I apologize because someone that's wearing a uniform that looks like me is the one that's giving you this pain. So for that, I apologize." And so he looked at me and he was like, "Really?" And at first they was like, "What are you apologizing for? What are you talking about?" I said, "I'm apologizing as an officer, telling you that I don't agree with what happened, okay? And I think things need to change. So going forward, you can never say that nobody actually reached out to you and said that they apologize because I really mean what I say." And so that's when he said, "Well, can you talk to us for a minute?" And then I stepped out and talked to the crowd.
One of the, I think, most important things that you said, well, I mean, you took a knee, which is something that we've seen officers kind of across the country do. We even saw it, there was a DPD own produced video, a couple of them actually, with taking the knee. I think you were ahead of that curve locally, but just as important is that you talked to the protesters about the notion of seeing this through.
Yes.
Can you talk some about what you meant by that?
Well, what I mean by seeing it through is it's like anything. I don't know if you have children, but anything in life, when you tell someone to see something through, they've got to be willing to put in the work. A lot of times, especially today's world, people will start out with something and then they don't finish it. And then when they don't get the reward at the end, then they're not understanding why. And so, as someone who understood why they were upset as protesters, understood the pain and the grief that they're experiencing, because I've experienced it myself, you know, looking at that video as a cop who's been a cop for 24 years, it just, you know, it appalled me what's going on in.
You're talking about the George Floyd video, right?
Yes, the George Floyd video. And so seeing something like that in 2020, I'm sitting here like, man, this is something that you would see in the 40s and 50s, you
Yeah.
know, because it was allowed in the 40s and 50s, even though it was still wrong. But, you know, this is 2020. So I'm looking at that video and looking at, you know, Mr. Floyd, and I'm like, in 2020? So I asked them to see it through, and meaning what I was telling them is in order for you to get what you want out of this, is you got to see it through, and that means you got to be willing to put in the work. You got to be willing to put in the grind. You got to be willing to step out there and do the things it takes to make sure that you see the change that you want. But you got to do it respectfully. You got to do it passionately, and you got to do it the right way. And the right way means,
yeah, go ahead.
the right way means that don't tear up the city. Okay, you have a lot of people right now that are listening that wouldn't have listened before. Even look at, you know, NFL commissioner. You know, he's coming out and stating things that Colin Kaepernick done, where before it was looked at as Black Lives Matter as a you know, a terrorist group, things of that nature. So you have a lot of people that are listening that wouldn't listen before. So don't damage your narrative by doing things that are destructive. Let's do it the right way so you can get the things fixed. And that's what I meant by seeing it through.
What is your, I mean, obviously the things were pretty tense there the first couple of days. How do you feel things have changed in the last couple of weeks?
I think we've made some headway. I think, you know, a lot of the protesters understand that there are a lot of police officers that know that we need some change, okay? And myself is one of them that they know, because I've spoken to several of them. I did multiple events in the last couple of weeks. I did one in Wiley, Texas. I did a number of sitting on panels here and speaking. And, you know, I've spoken to people afterwards and let them know, you know, how we look at things as police officers and how I feel as a black man. But, you know, what I want everyone to understand is that, you know, when you're wrong, and you have to own up to it. Whether it's someone that you like, love, or whatever, you still have to admit, hey, that was a wrong act. And so we've got to move forward as a police department. And what we got to do is understand, how can we get in 2020? We got to do 21st century policing to understand that the people that we go out and swore to protect and serve, we've got to understand where a lot of these people are coming from. I tell people all the time, it's really hard for you to go into a neighborhood and say you understand someone when you not know where they come from,
Yeah.
or you not know what has happened in that neighborhood in the last 10 years. And so there might be some frustration with the police. But if you know nothing about that neighborhood, or you don't understand where that person comes from, it's really hard sometimes to police that neighborhood, because now they feel like you just there being a part of the problem.
Can we talk, I want to get into some of the specifics of the stuff you're alluding to there. But before we do, you mentioned that you've been on the force for 24 years. I was
Well, I've
wondering
been
if
with Dallas. I've been with Dallas for 17. I've been a cop for 24 because I was a cop in Mississippi prior to coming to Dallas.
Okay, so can you just kind of walk me through your professional career, where you grew up, what brought you to DPD, and what roles you've held up until now?
Well, went to high school, played high school football, played a little college football, went into the military, did some active duty, and then I did about 9 years of reserve. So I've served my country. Was a police officer in Mississippi for 6 years prior to coming to Dallas. And I don't know if you know anything about Mississippi, but Mississippi has some high racial tensions. And so I was in Dallas. I'm sorry, I was in Mississippi as a patrol officer one night. And I got behind a car. I got a call. There was a car with a drunk driver. And I got behind the car, and the plate matched what was given out for the description when somebody had called in. Pulled over the car. It happened to be a white female. And as I, get to the car, I'm explaining to her who I am and what I'm stopping her for. What I didn't realize was that she happened to be a well-to-do white female in that neighborhood. And so as I'm trying to get her out and place under arrest for the DWI, she had alcohol in the car. As I'm getting ready to get her out, she spit in my face. And so I'm in full uniform.
Yeah.
And the worst thing you can do to anybody is spit on them. Because to me, when you spit on someone, that's almost like saying that you're not worth anything.
Absolutely.
And so as a police officer, someone who's trying to uphold the law, this lady spit in my face. I'm a black male officer. This is a white lady. And so other officers.
That's a troubling situation.
Yeah, so it's a troubling situation. And I happen to be the only black cop on watch that night. So the other cops that came, they came to help out. And they was a little bit deterred. And so, took her to jail for the DWI. And when it came time for her to go to court to deal with the actual DWI, she spoke about it. And the judge asked her, well, why did you spit on the officer? And she was like, well, I've never been touched by a black man before. And I'm like, I wasn't trying to touch you. I was arresting you. You drunk driving. That's what I'm saying to myself. Well, needless to say, she never got charged for spitting on me. And that DWI somehow went away. And so, racial tension in Mississippi, small town, is rough. And so I decided at that point, in order to start my career, it was time for me to leave. And so I came to Dallas to become a cop. And I've been out here for the last 17 years. And so, Dallas has its own issues, but as a department as a whole, we try to do what's right. And so many people don't understand that Dallas has the longest academy in the nation. Out of all police departments across, yes. Dallas Police Department has the longest and the most well-respected police academy in the nation. Police academy here is 9 months. Okay, 9 months every day from 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, and that's what recruits do. Dallas's standards is above the state standards. So everything the state has set as far as what we were required to do, as far as shooting anything, Dallas's is so say the state standard is 70. Dallas's standards is 80. And so we try. We're not perfect. Are there some things that need to be changed? Yes. And that's in policing, period. Because I think the one thing that, that really affects us in policing is there is no certain thing as far as the government, how we do things, as far as across the country. Every department pretty much writes their own policies and procedures of how they do things. And so sometimes you'll come in contact with that, and sometimes it will ruffle feathers. But it's like, to me, I didn't understand how Minnesota had, that policy in, their general orders. I'm sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
Sorry about that. Dropped it.
I think Yeah, I think Dallas may have a longer training situation, but you alluded to it. Dallas is not perfect. We've seen some major issues in the last couple of years with Officer Geiger, with the Tony Timpa case, a number of cases locally, also in the area, not just DPD. And then we also saw, obviously, a situation kind of the other way with the 7/7 shooting downtown. It seems like the last couple of years in particular, especially because heading into the 7/7 shooting, there was a lot of staffing issues with DPD. It just seems like that it's been a trying time, perhaps even just for morale at DPD. And I was wondering if you could speak some to that, because we've also seen regime changes. You know, I think we've had three chiefs in the last 10 years. So I mean, what's the general sense of morale at DPD right now?
Well, the general sense of morale is you got some people that are frustrated. I'm saying you got some people that don't believe. You got some people that, are in it for the long haul. And that's in any profession you have. I'm saying when new chiefs comes in or new chain of command comes in, everybody's not going to be happy with what they see. But for overall, I'm saying, I think, I would say majority of the people are wanting to come to work and still do their job. And that's a good thing. Do everybody always agree with what happens with the chains and things of that nature? You can't, but at some point in time, we can't get involved in some of that stuff because we still have a job to do as officers. I'm saying we've got to go out and protect the city and make sure that the citizens of Dallas are still being protected the way they need to be and done the right way. And as you alluded to a few minutes ago, we've had our issues, okay, and that's not to be looked away from. We've got to deal with those. We got to own them. We got to take them and make sure stuff like that doesn't happen again. And so with that going forward, the best thing for us is to try to get in there and get some things done to where we don't have another Amber Geiger or Tony Pops or any of that thing that where we're looked at in this light. Because when you have stuff like that happens, you have now to have to deal with it. And if you're not willing to deal with it the correct way, then it becomes an issue. And then now people think, well, you're not as sincere as you think you said you were. You're not really wanting to work on this. You're not really wanting to do this. And so we don't need that negative light here at DPD. What we need to do is try to make sure that we're doing the right thing. And sometimes doing the right thing means you have to stand alone until somebody is willing to stand alone with you.
Do you feel like there are a lot of cops? I mean, it sounds like you're calling for change, and I'm curious about some of the specifics that you may have in mind moving forward. But do you feel like right now, you work, I think, at the Central District in Deep Ellum, right?
I couldn't hear you say. You said what now?
Which you work at this division here in Deep Ellum, I believe, is what I was told.
I work out of Central. I'm on the motorcycle division.
So is that is the sense you get when talking to your fellow officers that they agree that there maybe needs to be change, or are they looking at the protests and being like, this is wild, why are we being put out to dry like this?
Well, I'll put it to you like this right here. Everybody knows how I feel. I'm saying I don't think there's a person in Dallas that doesn't know how I feel. And so people in my circle that I relate to, yes, says there needs to be a change. Have I spoken to some people that haven't said that? No, but I've read some quotes of some people that I don't really deal with who's, had their own opinion about things. And so I say that to this is you have to understand that in 2020, someone being killed at the hands of a cop and they're not doing anything, to where it's putting your life in danger, that's unacceptable.
Yeah.
That's unacceptable. Now, I understand if you're facing fear and you're trying to go home or something like that, then that's something different. But just for us to go out and put on the badge and the gun and have, no type of, sincerity or how we do the job and how we care for people, that's not right. And I think a lot of what we're dealing with goes way beyond than just policing. And I think that's where we don't understand it.
Like legislation and things like that?
You got legislation, you got policing itself. Think about how policing was in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. Things were allowed then that were okay. It was okay for cops to do things like that back then.
Yeah.
So now you've got to change that background of what people see about cops. Think about it like this right here. Is there still someone living right now that was living in the 50s and 60s and were mistreated by cops?
Yeah.
Yes, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely. So if you run in contact with someone that was living in the 50s and 60s, might have been in their early 20s, mid 20s, and they're they're here now, what is going to be their recollection of a police officer?
Ain't gonna be good.
Ain't going to be good. So what are they going to do to their family members? They're going to pass that down. So generations and generations are going to hate the police because of how they were treated then. So now you've got to try to change that concept of who we are as police officers, because back then that was allowed, but technically it was against the law, because you're misusing humans. What you also have to understand is this: you and I come from two different backgrounds.
Sure.
Okay, so I'm going to use this. So say if you grew up your whole entire life and someone told you that pit bulls were the worst dogs on the face of the earth,
Yeah.
and every time you saw one, man, you was just scared to death, but you never had to deal with one just outright openly, okay? And then the very day that you got out and you saw one and you had a gun on your hip, what are you gonna probably do to that pit bull if he advances you?
Probably not something good.
Probably not something good. So when you talk about systemic racism and things of that nature, you have to understand some of this ingrained in us from the way we were raised.
Absolutely.
If you were raised a different way, and something was ingrained on you to hate the other race, or tell you the other race is bad, as a police officer, when you get a badge and gun, it just gives you that much more power. And if you're
Yeah.
afraid of something from the get-go, when you're faced with fear, what are you gonna do?
Well, it's fight or flight, right?
There you go. So you're
Yeah.
gonna use the things that are on your belt to defend you from the fear, because that fear was putting you from the way you grew up.
Do you feel
And
like
so,
that's something that I hear a lot about? That I don't know if this is necessarily true of DPD specifically, but like you kind of hear that stereotype of like the kid who always wanted trouble grows up to be a cop, right? You want like the bully grows up to be a cop, like he wants to mess with people. Do you think that's a truism or is that a stereotype?
I think it's a stereotype, because if that was the case, then why am I a cop? And I consider myself to be a good cop. So I didn't grow up to be a cop because I was bullied. I growed up to be a cop because I wanted to make a difference.
Yeah.
And I saw what happened to me as a young kid and in college, and stereotyped by other police officers. So I'm not gonna agree with that one. But what I will say is we got some work to do as far as how we police and how people that come into the profession takes it seriously. You got some people
Yeah.
that come into the profession, they take it as a job.
Yeah.
Some people coming into the profession and they take it as an oath that they took. So,
Yeah.
that's something else you got to deal with too.
Yeah, I think it's important to probably acknowledge that a lot of people have different reasons for becoming a cop. One thing that I noticed you also, in addition to that protest video that kind of went viral of you talking to protesters, I attended the Blue for Black Lives Matter march a couple Fridays ago now. I saw you out there, kind of standing right in front of the speakers, including Chief Hall. And yeah, I don't want to project too much, but it looked like you were maybe not that maybe a little disinterested in what was being said. How do you get a sense of how is DPD leadership in general? Maybe don't have to name names, but in general, how do you feel DPD leadership is responding to the current situation that the department is facing?
Excuse me. Well, I can only speak on what I know.
Yeah.
And I do know that a lot of leaders in DPD want to do the right thing and are trying to do the right thing.
Okay.
There might be some that don't know how to take that next step to figure out what's going on. But I do know from the people I've spoke to from the leadership role, they want to do the right thing. They want to change some of the things that have happened. They want to make sure that the community knows that we have their back, and so that we have a good working relationship. That I do know. And so, like I tell you, I always surround myself around positive people that want to do the
Yeah.
right thing, because if you're negative, I don't have time for the negative energy, because all I'm gonna do is spend my time arguing with you, trying to force you to listen to me when you're not in that circle. So I try to base myself around people that want to do the right thing. And so the people in leadership that I base myself around, they actually want to make sure change gets what it needs in the Dallas Police Department.
let's take that a step further. What changes do you think DPD needs to institute?
Well, first and foremost, before you make change, I think you actually need to listen to the people and see what they think some of the
Okay.
changes are. Okay. And so you've got to get to the forefront. And like I told a group of guys the other night, I said, while you're out here protesting, understand that you have our ear now. And so what we need you to do now is bring some of those things to the table so we can sit down and listen and figure out what's the best route as far as going forward. I agree with the protesting that you're trying to get change, but at some point in time we've got to come off the streets just for a little bit and sit down at the table so we can have dialogue and make sure some of these changes are implemented. Because if you don't, you can continue to walk to next year. If you never put anything down, then that means you can't work toward getting the things you need change.
One of,
Myself,
one one of the specifics that's being brought up is this notion of defunding the police. And I think in many ways, some people are rushing and hearing defund, meaning unfund. I actually think Chief Brown addressed this a couple times towards the end of his tenure with DPD, talking about how there's too much put on the police department, that they're dog catchers, that they're social workers, that they're responsible for like marriage disputes, and that maybe some of these burdens should be shared. And I think that's in many ways what some of the chants for defunding the police is. It's asking for maybe more specified roles so that the cops aren't just kind of the Band-Aid on any ill that comes. Is that a notion that you agree with?
I do. And I support Chief Brown on that statement. Here's why, okay?
Okay.
You have to understand, in an 8-hour day as a police officer, we get calls because a mother's child don't want to eat a ham sandwich.
Do you
Okay?
really? Have you gotten that call?
Yes, I've gotten that call. Okay? We'll get a call about a cat stuck over here between the fence.
Man, that's
I
the
love
fire
animals
department's
too.
problem.
Well, no, it's an animal control problem. You understand what I'm saying? So, or we'll get a call, about um, just frivolous stuff that we're out every day, and then your call loads goes up, and then you cannot get to some of these things that you really want to deal with. I'm saying we all go through mental health classes to deal with mental health as far as police officers when we go out to calls. But I have to echo, as a police officer, we do way too much sometimes, and sometimes people think that we're the savior to all lives. In reality, some of the stuff that we deal with as police officers, you know, we have no business dealing with. And I do agree that some of these things need to be taken back because, you can't have us dealing with, all the issues because we're not equipped for it. We don't go to class to be a psychiatrist. We don't go to class to be a medical doctor. We don't do any of that. But a lot of times we're out here dealing with some of these calls. Now, I know what I signed up for as being a police officer, but I can tell you, in the 24 years of being a cop, okay, things have tremendously gotten great as far as our responsibility. And so I
Just more
think
on
when
your
you put,
plate, you mean?
yes, when you put too much on someone's plate, then that plate is going to crumble, you know. And so I think, you know, taking money away from the police is going to hurt the community because you're not going to be able to hire officers. You're going to have that criminal element that sees a need to do whatever he or she wants to do, and it's going to create havoc inside some of these communities. Do I think that what you just said, some of the duties need to be taken away so we don't have to deal with so much? Yes, I do agree with that because it's just too much going on. There's too many things that we have to deal with. And some of these small calls that we go out on, sometimes I've been on calls like, man, is this really a police issue or is
Right.
this a parenting issue?
Sure. Well, I mean, to that end too. I mean, you mentioned some of this stuff. Another. You were talking about that DPD is the longest training of most departments, but that's also something that has come up in these discussions as well. Is that just to be a beautician can take like 2 years sometimes to train. DPD might train more than most, but do you think that there's even more room for more training to be done?
Always. I'm saying you can't be the best of the best if you're not training. And
Okay.
so we do require a lot more than most police departments. You got to understand, beauticians, I think they require like uh, 13 40 or somewhere along in there as far as,
Yeah.
you know, hours to be a licensed beautician. And, you know, to be a cop in Texas is a little over 600 hours. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So, you know, but you got to also understand there, there are only several major metropolitan cities across the United States, and Dallas is one of them. Most of your policing is going to be in rural counties, rural places, or police officers, you know, where you got uh, maybe 20 officers on a shift, or 20 officers on a department, or 50
Yeah.
officers on
So
a
different
department.
departments need different training.
Yeah. So
But so would you argue that DPD should, you know, if Texas can have its state standards, the DPD should continue to have higher standards, and maybe even
yes,
greater standards even than it currently has?
yeah, and so our our state standards are here, and DPD standards are above the state standards, and that's in everything that we do on the department.
And then
Even
isn't it true that some like other departments send their recruits to DPD training, right? Don't some of the suburbs get trained in
uh,
DPD?
no, only way you go to DPD Academy is if you are applying to be a DPD officer, or you were part of the fire department and you're going through the fire marshal's class, and they go through the police academy.
But there's not a necessarily long requirement of how long you're a DPD cop before you can move on, right? Because that's an issue that DPD has faced a lot over the years, is losing talent, losing bodies to the suburbs, who can in some ways pay more because they do have larger budgets.
And that, and so I will say our pay has increased, you know, over the last couple of years, and thank God for that. But you know, when you start talking about our academy, um, first and foremost, it is the longest out of any police department in the country. It's 9 months, and through that 9 months, you get quite a bit. Now, are there some things that we can improve on? Yes, because just think about it like this right here. We do a lot of racial training in our police academy, and
Okay.
the person you're talking to right now teaches those classes. I
Oh,
do.
you're an academy instructor.
I teach out of the academy. I'm a racial profiling instructor. I teach African American culture. I teach fair and impartial policing. I teach police legitimacy. I teach de-escalation, and not only to Dallas. I've taught that across the country. I just taught in LA Sheriff Department
Wow.
last year about 90 sheriff's officers out there, de-escalation. So I do a lot of racial teaching, and then most of the racial stuff that's taught in the department is taught by me. And so the one thing I do in teaching my classes, some of the things I've shared with you right now is understanding that if you come into this academy and you're racist, you're gonna this block of instruction is not gonna keep you from being racist. What it's gonna
Right.
do is make you understand how you can deal with different ethnic groups and possibly keep your job, so you don't go out here and do something crazy.
I mean,
But
is
at the
there
end,
any way to block out racists in the police force? Is that just an impossible ask?
I would say yes, because you're dealing with human beings. It's just like in
Right.
your profession. I'm pretty sure you come across people in your
Oh yeah.
profession every day that's racist. I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure you've been to a doctor that's racist,
Hey,
or
it
a
was an
pastor.
impossible question, but I had to ask it.
But you know, and like I said, but can we improve on that? Yes, we can
Yeah.
improve on it. Is it probably impossible to keep people from being racist? Yes, it is, because like I said, I don't know how you grew up, and I don't know what you were taught about a Hispanic or a black or even your
Yeah.
own race, if you are of another race. You know what I'm saying? I don't know what you were taught. And so, with that being said, you know, we've got to get to the root of the problem, and that's trying to make sure every able body that we hire is of good standing, and you know, can go out and do the job the right way. Uh, I think a lot of times as I said earlier, we get people who just need a job sometimes, and
Yeah. Do you think there should be like an education requirement, like a
what
certain
we do,
degree?
yeah, Dallas does have, and most metropolitans do have.
Okay.
Okay, and so most metropolitans
What is
around
that
here
requirement?
ours is 45 college hours with a C average,
Oh
2.0.
wow.
Yeah. So you have to have at least 45 college hours with a 2.0 average in order to, you know, even apply. I think Arlington's, they have to have a bachelor's degree.
Oh
And
wow.
I'll be totally honest with you, most of the officers here have a bachelor's degree, except for if they have 4 years of military. You can go 4 years of military, active duty, they'll take you, and you can come in
Gotcha.
that way.
Just you brought it up, and it has been a hot button issue. De-escalation. You teach it. Uh,
Hmm.
that has been something that in the city council meeting a couple weeks back, Chief Hall even acknowledged she hasn't done much de-escalation training recently. What more can be done in terms of de-escalation training among DPD and then just cops in general?
Well, here's what a de-escalation training comes in at, and I teach it so I know how it works.
Yeah.
When you go to a call, a citizen calls you, they call you because what? They're going through a what?
Going through trouble. They're going through a problem.
They're going through a crisis.
Okay, sure.
They're going through a crisis because either their home was broken into, their car was broken into, their child just got assaulted. All these things are running through their mind, and they've never had to deal with the police before, so they're going through a crisis right now.
Yeah.
But as cops, when we arrive to the scene, to us, it's just a what? A problem.
Yeah.
You see the difference there? So
Yeah,
now
absolutely.
what you got to really do is get that person who called you to understand that they have a problem and we can take care of it as you see it. But if you allow them to stay in that crisis mode and you don't really deal with the issue that they have, once you leave there, their notion of the police is going to be a negative connotation.
So is it an empathy thing?
Some of it is empathy, some of it is understanding people, and some of it is understanding your job.
Yeah.
And so you have to have all three of those. Are there people that wear the uniform that don't understand how to properly do the job? Yes, because if you didn't have that, you wouldn't have issues like the George Floyd video. You understand what I'm saying? And so you have to understand when you're dealing with everyday citizens, okay, they are people. They're emotional just like you and I. But most of the time when people call for police, they're going through a crisis. And so it's up to us to make them understand that they're not going through a crisis, they have a problem, and we can fix that problem as police officers if we do our job the right way. Now, can we fix 100% of the problems? No, we cannot. But
yeah, especially if it's one of those things that you're not trained for that you're being asked to do.
There you go.
Yeah, you're talking a lot also about community relations, right? And community policing is a hot button topic as well. So is the notion of cops living in the cities that they work.
Mm-hmm.
What's your thought on that? Like maybe requiring police to live in Dallas if they work Dallas.
Well,
do you live in Dallas?
I don't live in Dallas. I live in Grand Prairie.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't live in Dallas, and the reason why that one I don't agree with is because sometimes, just trying to find a place, to where you feel comfortable, to where you don't have to deal with a whole lot, sometimes it's tough. Do I think that there needs to be some understanding for cops who actually work in Dallas to understand Dallas? Yes, I do. As a police officer, a lot of times when you go home after dealing with 8 hours of up and down, up and down, up and down, sometimes you just want a little bit of peace and quiet. So, that's why a lot of cops live outside the city. It's just for that little
There's
bit.
Also the notion of like accountability, right? Like I understand maybe you don't want to necessarily run into someone you put away. I think that's maybe a reason people want to live elsewhere. But isn't that a level of accountability on some levels? Like having, knowing if you treat someone poorly, you might run into them.
Well, and I will say this: sometimes you can treat people poorly, and if they have, correct that. Sometimes you can treat people with respect, and sometimes they might have an issue with what you do for a living, and you still might get backlash. Have I always made a right decision as a police officer? No, I haven't. I've made some mistakes. Have I pissed some people off? Yes, I have. But I'm willing to admit if I do something wrong, I'll apologize.
Are there any particular instances that like you'd be willing to share where maybe you didn't do the right thing and you learned from it?
Oh yeah, I'm saying I'm human. I'm saying, and that's probably what makes me who I am today. I can specifically remember I was dealing with a lady, and I talk real loud, and sometimes because I talk loud, sometimes the way I come off can seem to be a little bit harsh or rash
or aggressive.
And so, yes, and so I was speaking to her about a simple issue, and I was just speaking loud to her, and she was like, "Well, officer, you don't have to be so rude and so mean." And I said, "Ma'am," I said, "I'm not trying to be mean. I'm not trying to be rude. I just talk loud." I said, "But if I have offended you in any way, I apologize." I said, "Now, I'll calm it down. bring it down a level. Didn't know I was disrespecting you, because I don't want you to think that I'm not trying to do the right thing. I'm just trying to get some understanding. And at this point in time, we wouldn't understand each other. But once I apologized to her, the conversation from that point went excellent, because she said she's never had a cop apologize. I
Yeah,
don't have a
that's
problem with
interesting.
I don't have a problem with admitting when I'm wrong. I'm not gonna sit here and tell everybody in the world that I'm the best thing since sliced bread and I've never done anything wrong. That's no, I can't tell you that.
Yeah.
But what I can say is I've learned from my mistakes to understand how to be a better person. And every day I wake up, I just try to be better than I were the day before.
To that end, this is kind of the last question. I think we've seen some, I would say, objective mistakes in the way DPD has handled things the last couple of years here and there, but also I think, like, you know, even Chief Hall has acknowledged that maybe things weren't handled the best way at the top of this movement. How can the relationship change? What's next? What can DPD do now as it awaits perhaps some legislation, some budgeting changes that are coming, and that the city at large is looking at? What are the next steps that you think you and your fellow officers and the department at large can take to show a sign of good faith to the community?
Well, first and foremost, we got to understand that we as officers got to we've got to hold each other accountable. And what I mean by hold each other accountable is make sure that every person that puts on their badge for the Dallas Police Department wears it the correct way. And if you see something that's not right, then you've got to speak up.
Yeah,
Second
there's
of
that
all,
notion of, like, the one thing you often hear is there's a couple bad apples, but that phrase, the second half of that phrase is it ruins the bunch,
yes,
right?
it
So
does. And so we've got to get rid of the ones that are ruining a bunch, because you know just as well as I know, if you leave a couple bad apples in a good box of good apples,
yeah,
every apple in it is going to get ruined.
yeah,
And so when I mean hold us accountable is if you see something that's not going right, then you've got to be able to make a good judgment and good faith to say, hey, this is not right. You guys can't do that. Okay. Now, you were told them what they need to do, and now you got to take the next step. We can't continue as police officers to get up each and every day and pray and hope that the citizens of Dallas or wherever you police will give you the respect you need if you're not upholding that.
yeah,
And so what we got to understand is people are frustrated for a reason, okay? And it's not just to say, well, oh, they overreacting. People are frustrated for a reason, and they have a right to be frustrated because of the things that they've seen over the course of the years. I will say to how we can improve that as police officers is next sitting down with some of these true leaders who are leading these marches
yeah,
and hear and listen to what type of changes they need. And then we need to be able to come back with them and say, this is what we can do. This is what we can do. This is what we can do. That right there, I don't know if we can do that. Because like some of this stuff that you're talking about are legislative changes. Some of this stuff is political. Some
yeah,
of this stuff, you know, as local police departments, we can't get involved in because we have no standing with trying to get that change. Second of all, everybody needs to understand that, you know, some of your local government, you know, you put people in place. And some of these things that you want change in policing, you have to be willing to step to the forefront and go down and say, here's what I want change. Like I said, there's more than one part of the justice system, okay? Police is one of it, and I know we're seen at the front line. So because we're seen at the front line, we have to hold ourselves accountable more than people that's on the back line of it, because we're the first people that they see.
yeah,
But when you talk about us changing the direction right now, or how many people see us, especially people of color, we've got to do something totally different that we haven't done in the last 20 years. And that means we've got to be willing to sit down at the table, okay, listen and learn, and try to implement some things to keep citizens safe and keep our officers safe. Because at the end of the day, as a police officer, all I want to do is be able to come to work and service the people that I serve and go home at the end of the day. Okay.
yeah,
Second of all, I want the people that I service to understand that I do generally care about the people inside my neighborhood and the people that I'm going out to service every day. And so you have to understand, is it going to be a tough road? Yes, it is. But like I said earlier, we have to stay the course. Okay, we've got to be willing to fight the fight. We've got to be willing to put in the, you know, the hours that it takes to make sure that when a police officer comes out to a call, he's not seen as a bad light. And I understand that every officer is not bad. I'm one of them. I'm not a bad guy. But when people see me in this uniform, sometimes it's hard for me to make them realize that I'm one of the good guys.
Yeah.
And so what I want is I want for the general public to say, you know, yeah, those are the good officers right there. And for us that are good officers, we now have to make sure that we make those ones that wear the uniform that are bad very uncomfortable. Okay,
Yeah.
don't come around me with your nonsense. You're gonna have to be uncomfortable walking around me. It's like your grandma always say, you're gonna have to walk on eggshells to come around me because I don't want to hear the nonsense. Okay.
And you think there are cops who are willing to do that right now in DPD?
I know cops that are willing to do that. I talk to them every day. I know most people see me because I was out in, you know, on Twitter and all that stuff. But like I tell you, I surround myself around people that are willing to do that, and that's black, white, Hispanic officers. I deal with them every day that say the same things I say. Think like I think. It's not just black officers I deal with. I got white officers that I deal with, Hispanic officers that I deal with, other nationalities, Asian. I got plenty of officers that I deal with that feel the same way that I feel. I'm just a little bit more vocal. You got to understand. I'm 50 years old, so you know. So it to me,
Yeah.
I look at why stand for something that's wrong when I can't stand for what's right.
Yeah, and I think, you know, you saying that and you telling those protesters that, you know, on many levels there are people on your side who agree with them. I think that's important. We've talked for 45 minutes, which is a long time, Sergeant. So I'm very thankful and appreciative for your time and candidness and, you know, how forthright you've been and insightful. I guess my last question, and it's kind of just a yes or no simple question. Are you hopeful? Do you think change can come? Do you think these relationships can be repaired?
Yes, I do. I'm saying I wouldn't even be here. I wouldn't speak to you if I didn't think change would come. Because first and foremost, you're speaking to me right now, and I've given you some points where I think is hopeful, and we can engage with the community and try to get some things done the right way. I'm always hopeful. Every day I wake up, I'm hopeful. So from my standpoint, and the people that I hold accountable, and the people that I deal with on a daily basis, this is the things we talk about. Some things that need to be changed. Some things that we think can get to the top of the forefront, and we can get some things, done the right way as police officers and citizens. So yes, I'm hopeful about everything that we've saw. Look at it. Look at your NFL commissioner. We never thought he would have changed either, but he did, right?
Yeah, I mean, but sometimes change can come a little too late, right?
And I agree, but if you can get somebody to change their mind, it's never too late about how they see different ethnic groups and things of that nature. To continue to go on and say, well, it is what it is, that's what's wrong. But if you can do something and you can get someone to change about how they view people that look different from you, I never think it's too late, because that's what we're struggling with right now. We're struggling with the people that never saw it that way. And so now we have to understand that everybody has to look at themselves in the mirror when they wake up every morning and say, am I doing enough? Am I doing what's right to make sure this changes across America?
Well, Sergeant Carter, congrats on your recent promotion to Sergeant, by the way. Thank you for taking the time with us. And hopefully this is a conversation we can continue again sometime down the line. But thank you for your time.
Anytime you need me, sir, just give me a call.
All right, you got it, Sergeant. Thank you for your time. Enjoy your night off, and hopefully we'll talk soon.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.